What I want to talk to you a bit about today is what Woodcraft Folk is, what we do as part of our role as the cooperative youth movement of the UK to work on issues around gender, around gender inequality, and how we try to tackle that within our movement. And so far, it's not been too bad. This is a pie chart that most people will be very unfamiliar with in relation to gender because it's almost completely equal. In fact, the red half is bigger by one person, and that's the women on our executive board, the Trustee board, which I used to be on. Our boards there's a mix depending on whether they're a local committee running their regional groups or whether it's the district fellows, the 16 to 21-year-old age group. But women are very well represented, particularly young people are very well represented on our boards. And, for instance, this year our chairing team for the district fellows is all female for the second year running. It's almost that we need a male quota to make sure that they're still represented. But I don't want to talk about representation too much because I think it's actually just a minor symptom of something that is largely insignificant within our movement. I think the majority of people aren't on boards. The majority of people are members of our organisation, and for your organisations it will be the consumers or the workers within your organisations. And the representation only scratches the surface of the issue of gender inequality. For those of you who don't know much about the Woodcraft Folk, we are... the youth movement started in 1925. We have aims and principles around social justice, environmentalism, internationalism and equality. We consider ourselves the cooperative youth movement of the UK. We are affiliated to Cooperatives UK and lots of other similar movements. What I want to talk to you about is how we translate our aims and principles, particularly the one relating to equality into action and how that features in the educational work that we do around our political and social education. We have a couple of projects that are run by various parts of Woodcraft Folk and our international friends. One is the Rainbow Project, which teaches about gendered communication and the way that gender affects our everyday lives, the way it affects our identities, what gender is. So far we've talked about gender very much as a binary, and it teaches about gender theory in a way that relates to young people. The Messed Up project, for which we have the logo up on the screen, is a project that was started by the District Fellows movement, the 16 to 21-year-olds, talking about... I'm trying to remember the acronym now. Jess told me it earlier. It's very hard. It's Mediation, Education, Support Team, Umbrella Project. Shoehorned in a bit to make that work. But it teaches about mental health issues, about gender, about sexuality, about drugs, about sex and rock and roll, and all the other things that young people find issues in their lives and find interesting as well. One thing that Messed Up delivers a lot of education on is consent, and we've had interesting conversations within the organisation recently about language, and we want to develop that a bit more. What kind of language is derogatory to women, what kind of language we find acceptable. Following the slut walks, which our members took quite a lot of interest in, it was interesting to discuss how people feel about that word. And while lots of things can be quite serious, we also have quite a lot of fun discussing these things. I went to a workshop organised by Messed Up this summer about sexual taboos. I learned a lot of facts that I didn't necessarily need to know, but were interesting nonetheless. I probably learned a lot of myths as well. I'll need to check through that. We talked about the history of sex toys in the Victorian era. And it's absolutely fascinating what comes up when you provide an area for people to talk about these things without inhibition. Another silly thing was when I arrived at a camp this summer, they were halfway through a workshop entitled Genital Cupcake Making. You're provided with icing of various colours, and you create penises and vaginas, and you can use the sugar strand as a pubic hair. You can use edible silver ball bearings as piercings, if you like, or as a vajazzle. And it prompted some quite interesting conversations. They were also very tasty. It changes your perspective of things a lot to eat one of them. But it prompted a lot of discussion about what is ideal for men, what is ideal for women. And with a huge increase that most people don't know about, there's been a massive rise in the amount of cosmetic surgery done on genitalia recently, particularly for women. And there is a culture at the moment of aspiring to have the designer vagina. And it's a cultural phenomenon that's a bit scary. And it seems strange that this isn't something that's part of public discourse. And it was really quite a privilege to be part of that conversation, however informal it was. And I enjoyed that a lot. We also, so far what I've been talking about is mostly done with our older age groups, but we also have looked at masculinity, femininity, what that means to people growing up. This resource pack was produced last year, putting an end to boys will be boys. And it looked at various phrases in one activity. I think that's girls' work, boys will be boys, of course, the things that make everyday sexism seem acceptable. And without addressing these issues at a young age, there's no way they're going to end. We've talked about quotas being a surface solution to deep ingrained sexism within who we vote for, who we will appoint, who we will work with, how we work with them. But it's the education about just our expectations of masculinity and femininity that need to be addressed before any of those things can really make a big difference to the way women and men live their lives. We're also at the moment looking at producing a lot of resources around radical history, not just related to women's history, but we're looking, for instance, at the cooperative movement. I'd be grateful if anyone who knows a lot about women in the cooperative movement in the past would like to speak to me about that. I knew nothing about it before, someone mentioned it today, and it would be fascinating to see more of these things taught to young people and made a part of our awareness of British history and world history. We're looking at including things about the Match Girls strike, which I find fascinating, about early feminist writers, Mary Wollstonecraft. We're looking at including a lot on the suffragettes, because this is exciting parts of history. I mean, women smashing up windows when they weren't allowed to get degrees is incredible. It's exciting. And it's something that absolutely young people want to learn about and can benefit from learning about. All our work is designed to be empowering young people to do everything that they can in life, everything that they can achieve. It's about fulfilling potential and empowering them to play a role in their societies. I think that the main things that's missing is partly the skills, but also the confidence to participate actively in society. I know that last week or the week before, the Women in Journalism report was released, and the number of bylines that are met by women is incredibly low for... I think the Daily Mail outperformed the Guardian, which came as a bit of a worry to me. But we, for instance, offer a young reporters training, which helps young women and young men learn about how to be a journalist. We have a newspaper that fosters this kind of thing. We look at making our education relevant to everyone and helping them learn about things that they don't necessarily get the chance to or they don't get encouraged to do. We had a feature on computer coding written by a woman, and most people see computer coding very much as a male domain. And I think it's not a coincidence that many of our older members have gone into incredibly interesting fields of work after having left school or university. And I think the Woodcraft, for instance, the things that I have learned through board meetings training, which is about how to communicate in meetings well, something which I imagine almost every board in the country could benefit from. It was of great use to me and has certainly helped me get my job in Parliament. That kind of support is invaluable. And basically what we try to do is foster an environment in which girls can be rock climbing and fixing the buildings that we own, and boys can be doing drama and teaching baking, and in which everyone has the chance to dress and act as they like in the way that they want, with the labels that they like, and hopefully we can have a bit of fun along the way. And we like to look at what these labels mean to us. We often have quite a few drag nights. And hopefully that's helped you understand a bit about what we do. If you're interested in knowing any more about Woodcraft Folk, there are lots of people in luminous green T-shirts behind you. Please talk to them. Please ask them about what it means to be in Woodcraft, what you can do to be a part of that movement, and what the cooperative movement can do to support us.
So I'm going to tell you a bit about the campaign, to give you an idea of what we do and my role in it, and then I'm going to talk about gender and my experience of it whilst campaigning and in finance, as I've observed it. So let's start with the campaign. Who here has heard of Move Your Money? Wow, lots of people. Great. So it's a global movement. It's grassroots, and it consists of people who are fed up with the status quo of the financial system, and they don't see the regulators or politicians doing anything to make the system better, and they recognise their power as consumers to make a difference. And it really kicked off in the US just after the financial crisis, when millions of people have moved their money since. But people aren't just concerned about the practices that led to the financial crisis directly. People are also concerned about the ethical standards in banks and about practices such as tax avoidance and big bonuses. But it really varies for different people. And so in each country there are different campaigns to help people move their money. And they really vary because in each country the financial system's so different. So I went to Denmark recently for the launch of their campaign, and there they have actually established financial cooperatives on the high street. So there's some really big, lots of options for people to move their money to, whereas in the UK, where we have credit unions, which are financial cooperatives, only 1% of people currently bank with them. It's a much smaller part of the sector. So in the UK, we've got a bigger job in raising awareness of the options available to people. So in the UK, we started our campaign in February, and I have been working on it with a group of really great people since last November. So it's our year anniversary at the moment. And our main resource is a website, which I recommend that you have a look at. It's moveyourmoney.org.uk. And there we lay out all of the financial institutions available to you in the UK. And we shine a light on some of the practices of the big high street banks. And we also raise awareness of all the other types of financial institutions available, such as building societies, credit unions, ethical banks. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about why we advocate those now, but I recommend that you have a look at the website. And also we've got a workshop tomorrow morning at 9:30. But briefly, we advocate those financial institutions because they've got different ownership structures, which means they care more about the customer, and they've got ethical commitments at the heart of their business practices. So, and we also have very active social media. So you can find us on Twitter at Move Your Money UK, and we run events and workshops and actions and media stunts. And we estimate that since January about 500,000 people have moved their money, which is really great. And we've got politicians supporting us, and Polly Toynbee told me before she left that she's moved her money as well. So that's really great to hear. So I'll just tell you a bit about my role in the campaign and my experience. So about just over a year ago, I never ever thought that I would be a campaigner. I was working and researching as an economist for about 6 years, and but I wasn't a kind of banky, financy economist because, like most good economists, I didn't look at banks or finance or money. But then when the financial crisis came, I was really fascinated, of course, and but then I became very disillusioned when I was talking to the people who were supposed to be influencing government policy, like John Vickers, that what they were looking at was very narrow and they weren't really going to make a difference. So I started thinking, okay, what can I do? And that took me to Move Your Money. And if anyone here has ever worked in campaigns or activism, I think you'll know that there's a lot of passion and drive and never enough resources. So you always end up being thrown into the deep end and doing things you never thought you would. And so it's great, whether you're a man or a woman, to really use activism and campaigning to try out new things and develop new skills, especially if you've got a really supportive group. And yeah, so with Move Your Money, our team is incredibly equally mixed, and we do all sorts of jobs. Everyone's either filling in forms or doing bits of public speaking. And we have 3 directors, 2 of whom are female. So I'm really proud of that. If you look at gender in finance, of course, the story is very different. We heard a bit about that earlier. But I mean, there's a fundamental problem with the position of women in finance. If you look at compared to the rest of society, finance is like back before Christ, and that's just totally unacceptable, because finance in any economy is a vital sector, and in the UK, finance is one of the most significant parts of our economy. So it's a huge employer, and of course, the attitudes within that sector affect the rest of society. But women are underrepresented in finance, and they're highly concentrated in secretarial and admin jobs. And if you just look at some of the kind of key figures in banking, if you read the newspaper, the main people that come out will be like Bob Diamond, who was at Barclays, his mate Rich Ritchie. There'll be Stephen Hester in RBS. If you look at regulation as well, there's Mervyn King, there's Adair Turner. That's not to say there are some great women as well. There's Stephanie Flanders, who I love, and Gillian Tett, but they're both journalists. And then there's a woman that I don't love so much called Angela Knight, who's the voice of the banking lobby. But there's a clear underrepresentation in finance. So I haven't done a comprehensive study, because actually being invited to this event made me think about women in the alternative finance sector. But I have looked at how women are doing in the alternative sector, and whether actually there's more gender equality in the banks that we're advocating. If you look at building societies, like a quick Google of board members, you'll see that just like the high street banks and the investment banks, there's about 20% of women on boards that are on boards, and that's the same in building societies. If you look at also the ethical banks, although they're really committed to including women and gender equality and equality on other levels as well, they actually also have quite a limited with female representation at senior level, but they say that's because the Financial Services Authority is very strict about recruitment at a senior level, and so the pool of applicants that they can choose from are from the mainstream high street banks, and of course we know there's a gender bias there. If you look at credit unions, membership can be up to 70% women, a bit like the Co-op group. I doubt that holds at a senior level. I don't have a figure for that though. But it's really encouraging that women are really included in the credit union movement. And I think that's partly down to the fact that credit unions do a lot of outreach work, and they go to where women are, and like creches, Sure Start, to make sure that women have access to finance. But I think you'll get, I haven't got a comprehensive overview, but I think you'll get the idea, like I have, that there's a long way to go in the alternative sector, just like on the high street in finance. to get gender equality. But I think that as the alternative sector is growing, it offers a real potential to make sure that as customers and as members, we make sure that those different financial institutions know that we want more women in the banks. And I know that Move Your Money's interested in campaigning as well, because I think there may be some regulatory issues as well to attack. And also, before I came here, I spoke to some really inspiring women who work in the alternative sector already, and we're planning on holding or bringing together women in finance or women who are interested in working in finance next year. So if anyone is interested in that, please let me know. And yeah.
Okay, so my name is Britta, and I am involved in the Worker Cooperative Council, which is organised by Co-operatives UK, and through that I'm on the board of Co-operatives UK. But and this is the reason why I got involved in the Women's Challenge, because I realised that the co-op I'm working in is completely different to all the co-ops I've heard about. So I'm going to quickly tell you about the job I'm working in. I'm mainly doing HR at Unicorn, but I'm also company secretary, so I've got quite a good overview of the business. So I'm quickly going to tell you just about Unicorn very briefly. I wanted to speak a bit about the model, but I think there's more important things to talk about, so I'm going to skip that slide. But I'm going to talk about the structure, and I'm going to explain a bit about the equality at Unicorn and why it's so equal. So I think there was a question earlier in the audience saying, like, oh, can we learn from other companies? So I really hope that there's really good bits at Unicorn we can, like other companies can take things from. So we're located here in Manchester. We've opened in 1996, and we're mainly selling organic fruit and veg that really draws the customers in. And we sell about 3,000 different lines of grocery items, and also a very good range of non-food items. We also, the turnover has really, in the last 16 years, it's just really gone through the roof. So at the moment, I've got £4.5 million a year, which averages out about £89,000 a week, and we also draw in 5,000 customers weekly, which it's quite impressive, I would say. We also own our building, and we also own some land, some farmland, which is grown by another cooperative. So, I'm going to skip the slide about our model, So a lot of things is kind of possible local and organic and fair trade, of course. Direct and bulk buying are really important to us. One of our main buyers is actually a woman as well, so which is all good. Our structure, so a worker cooperative, if you're not familiar, it's where all directors are workers in the cooperative. So we have got 47 people working. We've also got some casual staff, which is always a very good way of recruiting people, and it's unfortunately necessary in retail to kind of fluctuate a bit. Our structure is completely flat, so there's no hierarchy, no formal hierarchy, I have to say. So, there will always be a bit. People have been there longer, but there's no hierarchy. So, and also, which is quite rare for worker co-ops, there's no elected management committee. So all our decisions are still made by everyone, by the whole membership of 47 people. It sounds worse than it is. It actually really works really well still. And we do have specialist teams, as I said, I work in HR, but you will always have some time on the shop floor. And we've also got an overview of every team as well. All our decision is still kind of very unusual with 47 people, but they're all reached by consensus. So now coming to the gender balance in Unicorn. As you can see, we've got 21 female staff and 26 male. And if you look at this little graph I made, so we've got full-time, there's slightly more men than women. But the part-time is really equal, which is, I guess, is quite interesting for, what I heard earlier, so in the room. And I was thinking while I was listening, and I thought, oh God, we've got more full-time people. But actually, none of them are working full-time to support their wife being at home or something, Oh God, the thing's just falling down. Also interesting enough, our finance team is dominated by women, and it always has been, strangely enough, which is really interesting to hear that it's still quite rare. And then the shop floor team, they're dominated by women. HR, which is very female-dominated area in general, is actually 50-50. And so that's interesting as well. So, of course, there's always the difference as well. 100% of our warehouse workers are all male. But it has not always been like that. It's just the way it is at the moment. But we've got the forklift drivers we train internally. We've got a lot of women there as well. They do get hassled by our delivery drivers once in a while, but other people stand up for them, so that's quite nice. Okay, so yeah, like I was trying to think, like, oh God, why is Unicorn so equal? And I was thinking really about it. It's completely culturally ingrained at Unicorn. It's just not on the agenda. We just don't have a problem with this. So there's just no need for quotas. It just comes very naturally. Or there's no policies or anything like that. It's just the way we recruit. It just evens out very, very nicely, very organically even. So of course there will always be a few things that help equal pay. We all get paid the same hourly rate. So people say, pay. But as you can see, the amount of male and female part-time workers is even out, so we can't even be done by indirect discrimination there. So it kind of works as well. Then it's quite another astounding fact that there's an equal amount of female and male staff that either share this childcare responsibility, or we've got actually quite a few male staff that are the main carer for the child. And, I've heard earlier that, and it's kind of like such a shock for me, but of course there's part-time employment. It's just not a question, because it's so easy to do, because we multitask as well. It's quite easy for us to offer that. And yeah, like all of a sudden today, hearing about this, I realized like how important that was, and that probably explains a lot why we're so equal as well. So there's also, we really give the same opportunities for all. Most people are actually developing the skills within the business. As I said earlier, one of the finance people, she just kind of was thrown into it, and she said, okay, I'm just going to make it work. So she's going to do an accountancy course and everything, so that kind of works really well. So yeah, so it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be a woman or a man or anything to get all these skills. It's just whoever, comes forward and says, oh, I'm interested, so that kind of works. As I said earlier, there's no hierarchy, so there's just no pay or power-related competition. So that kind of looks very nice as well. Mm-hmm. It's all, someone talked earlier about the work-life balance, which I realized at Unicorn is really, really important to us, so because we work quite hard, But one thing we always done is board meetings, and never during school holidays, for example. It's just like a simple thing to do, and it's just kind of, we're looking at the, like Manchester Council, they publish it 2 years in advance, and it's just like simple, simple thing to do. We have had people bringing their kids if it's really bad, but, so... And also, it's like little things, like excessive overtime. It's just not encouraged, so that it already creates quite equality as well, so because if their mothers or fathers even, want to go home and just don't have the opportunity. So that's quite good. And often any childcare problems or needs or anything, they're usually accommodated, and staff are really understanding and as well. So, like my colleague, he's troubled, like his partner is working full-time and he is the main carer, and he can't, she's working night shifts. So I said, well, you know what, if you've got any trouble, I just come and cover your shift, and that's quite usual, quite normal at Unicorn, so it's a nice thing to do. I guess it's a bit easier in retail, when we're multitasking as well. Might not work in every company, but, so it should. One thing I'm really proud of at Unicorn is there's a lot of trust and the communication, which I think is really, really key. Sometimes people just don't express that they've got any kind of problems or issues, and I think it shouldn't be a bad thing. I think it was really interesting to say, it's fine if you're a man and got, I'm a parent, I want to be at home. And we really got that really going at Unicorn, where people say, no, I really want to see my children now. A man, woman, it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of definitely, so it's interesting that you said that that should happen. So. Also talking about other worker co-ops, I really think that the worker co-ops really seem to attract feminists, female and male. And funnily enough, there's one of my male colleagues' mothers here, and when I said to her, "Oh, I think unicorn members are feminists," she was really proud that I called her son a feminist. So that's nice. And we really practice all the cooperative values, not only in work, but also, like really in everyday life. And, as Polly highlighted, one of the quotes from the Women Challenge publication, that cooperative values are feminine. And it is true. And I really think, it should just not be at work. It should just be, every time, and especially at work as well. So yeah, I really think that equal pay, equal distribution of knowledge and power, and also the same job description is it's very easy for worker cooperatives. But I really think that any kind of hierarchical companies can learn from worker co-ops to improve the equality. So, okay, thank you.